Hi, this is David Odell with Odell Complete Concrete. Here's a quick preview of what we're going to build throughout this video. So I'm going to show you the whole build series of how to do this, and it's fairly simple. Here's the mold. Now I've already pre-oiled this with some form oil, and I happen to be pouring a job, so we're just going to use the regular concrete mix. This is just a 2500 PSI. It also has fiber mesh in it, which is ideal since this is only about a 2.5 inch thick piece of concrete we're dealing with. So fiber mesh comes in real handy. As we're putting it in here, I've got the vibrator going at the same time. Also, I've got this set on a pallet with a chunk of plywood over the pallet. That way I get a good flat surface. Another thing I'm going to do, once I get this leveled out and I think I've got it all vibrated enough, I'm going to actually just drive the tractor around. That way, just driving it and driving the tractor over the rocks will shake it even more and really get the air out of this. This is the Mayan design, this particular mold. I have another mold that has the north, south, west, east directions. I'll probably be doing one of those pretty soon, but this is my first mold. And wire mesh going in, which is another good idea on something that's going to be suspended in the air. Fiber mesh, wire mesh, good way to support itself. Now that we got the wire in, we've got it vibrated. Now I'm just going to drive around and shake it down a little bit more. There's a lot of detail on this particular mold, and you definitely don't want to strip this one early. You want this fully cured before you strip it out of the mold. Otherwise, you'll take chunks of that detail out with it. There it is. There's my shaker. Here's just a last minute idea that Doug came up with. He's going to slap some angle iron in there as a potential way to fasten to the legs or whatever we're going to mount this to. Could be welded that way potentially, although we didn't use it, but it was another option. So the flatter that you get this right here at this point, the bottom of this table, the flatter you get it, the easier it's going to be to mount level on something. You can always adjust it if it's not that perfect on the bottom here. But every step of the way makes a difference in the end. Here's that angle iron. Surprisingly, it went in all the way. It didn't get hung up on the wire, so that's a good sign that the wire's in there deep enough. Right here, I'm just cleaning the outside of the mold, trying to get that excess concrete off of there. Because this is a mold that can be reused over and over and over. In other words, if somebody wanted one of these, I could actually custom make it for them. Shipping it or delivering it would be the hard part. These are about, I would say, 300 pounds. Now I'm just going to put my autograph in the bottom of this table here. All right, so this is how you get your layout. We got 4 stools, so basically we're just going to make a square. The corners of the square is the stools. Now you take a line diagonally from corner to corner, and the very center intersecting point will be the center table. All the material I sourced at Home Depot. We've got the Quickcrete pre-mixed concrete, sonotubes from Home Depot. There were 4-foot sections. I cut them in half to 2 foot, so I got 2 stools out of each sonotube. So as we're doing this, I'm not using any steel reinforcement in any of this. So my plan is to keep this pour going steadily to the top. That way I don't have a cold joint in the concrete itself. With a cold joint and no steel, it's a great potential crack point. So if you can just continually pour up monolithically all the way up, you'll be good. So first I started by filling the hole. While the concrete's still really wet, we started filling them up. So I'm not really staking these off. Like in some cases, you could throw some kickers off of these sonotubes, and plumb them ahead of time. But I'm just kind of freehanding this. I'm going to fill them up probably 8 inches at a time and plumb them, put another 8 to 12 inches in there, and keep plumbing and checking all the way to the top. I have a vibrator as well, concrete vibrator that I'll be using, but I'm not going to put it inside the tube. What I'm doing here with this vibrator is I'm just holding it on the outside. Because I think what was happening is from the weight and the height of this, the concrete was trying to push out the bottom. And I knew that it would all come out if I put the vibrator on the inside. So I elected to use the vibrator on the outside to just give it a real minimal vibration effect. Seemed to work really well, and you'll be able to see. I'm going to pull these off. I'm going to pull the cardboard sonotube. I'm going to strip them the very next day, early in the morning. So these didn't set very long at all before I decided to strip them down. The nice thing about stripping these early is the sonotube was still moist. So cardboard it's hard to tear when it's dry. When it's wet, it tears really easily. And that's how this came off, and you'll get to see that too. So at this point, I can still adjust them for plumb, even though I'm topped off. Still making some real subtle adjustment. And even the height, I could actually pull them up or push them down into the footing to get the height exactly level. Initially, I decided I wanted to edge the top of these sonotubes. It worked okay, but it wasn't really ideal. So what I ended up doing after I stripped is a little grinding and patching, which I'll show all that. I'm just using a 6-foot level there to level off the tops of them. So the center post is 30 inches off the dirt, and then these chairs are about 2 feet. Now, when you build a table or outside patio furniture set like what I'm doing here, you want to make sure wherever you put it that it's going to stay, because this isn't something you're going to move around the patio. It's going to pretty much stay where you put it. The nice thing about this, though, is you don't have to worry about getting a new table in a couple years due to sun damage and weathering and what have you. This is pretty much just going to stay the way it is forever. So as it started to cure out, it really settled down as it was starting to dry. It dropped about a good 1/2 inch below the top of sonotubes as it started shrinking and drying. So I add a little more to the top. Here's the very next morning. I'm going to get ready to strip this stuff off. So I had the little 4-inch right angle grinder with a diamond blade on it, just in case. Like if this sonotube was dry, I probably would have had to score it a little bit to start tearing it. But since it was so moist, I was able just to grab it and it just started ripping right off. The only bad thing about stripping these early is you're going to delaminate the surface a little bit. In other words, you're going to get some rock pockets and you're going to pull a little of that finish off with the cardboard when it's moist like this. But I wasn't real concerned because what I'm planning on doing is rubbing some patch all the way around the tops of these and all the sides. But here's some of the cardboard that got stuck into the top when I was edging. So I had to get all that out because I want to really clean. I don't want to encase that cardboard when I start doing the patchwork on it. Because I'm staining, I'm not going to just be able to patch a little bit because stain's going to probably take a little bit differently to different products. So I'm going to just go ahead and put a coating on the whole post, the stools, the whole works. First, I'm going to shape it up with a little cup diamond blade on my 4-inch grinder. So I'm going to get a rough shape on that edge of the grinder, and I'm going to cover it all. In other words, I'm going to get this as smooth as glass before it's ready to stain. So I put a little water to knock the dust off, put a little moisture in there. You don't want it soaking wet, you just want it moist. That's how you're going to get the best bond. The nice thing about doing this patch the very next day of the pour, the concrete's still moist enough so that it's going to really adhere. It's going to become one. If you can catch a patch the very next day, chances are it's going to bond really well. Now, if you were to wait a couple weeks and patch, you're going to probably need bonder. But in this case, you won't need it because it's early enough. I started out with the margin trowel spreading this patch on there, but I just wasn't happy with it. So I just used my hand, and that worked a lot better. So I'm just going to get the shape of it, get a nice coating over the top. Then what I'll do, because this particular patch is really fine sand, so as soon as you touch it with anything, as it starts to dry, it's going to always come out smooth. It's because of the sand size in it, it's very fine. It's probably like a 60, maybe even less. That's 60 silica, number 60. I mean, 30 is a little coarser. This particular patch is probably like a 60, I would say. So it's very fine. So you can't go wrong if you want a smooth finish. So we've got a nice coating on there by hand. Now I'm taking a very, just a damp, not super saturated sponge, just to smooth it out, get some of the hand markings off of there. So that's how it looks before you patch. There's a finished patch, and then that center's not finished. So you can see the difference in it, what the patching makes. I'm on the last post here. And once that's done, I can start on the tabletop that's going to mount on the top of that. So that's what it looks like when you're looking at it from the bottom. Now I'm getting ready to set this on top. I had these brackets made. There's a metal shop, welder fabrication shop, real close to my house. So I went over there and had to make these. They're 1 foot by 1 foot. And I'm going to mount it to the center here because What I don't want to happen is, let's say you have some kids that are jumping up and down on it or whatever. If you don't have these brackets, if the whole thing falls over, it could hurt at 300 pounds. So this is just a little safety feature. So what I've done, I just kind of plumbed down where I want to mount these. I got a center line on the post for the tabletop, and then I just brought it on down some vertical lines. That way I can line it up, get them nice and straight and spaced evenly. It's going to be 4 of these brackets. I'm going to use tap cons, masonry screws, basically. So this is another benefit to not having steel in here, like rebar and reinforcement. There's a possibility I could have drilled into a piece of rebar, then I would have had to move those angle brackets. This is day 3 after the pour and patch. So it's still not fully cured, but it's cured enough to where I can drill and screw. The top of my post is pretty level, but what I'm doing is I'm going about 3/16 of an inch above that concrete post with my brackets, because I'm going to put some glue in here, some liquid nail on top of this post, and then also on the brackets, and then I'll also have screws going up from the bottom into the tabletop, which you'll see that I actually had a concrete failure on the tabletop with the drill on hammer mode. Yeah, right here you can see what's happening here is the way I drilled this bracket was too low or it was too high, something to that effect. So I had to re-drill. Then the hole got too big. So now I'm putting some liquid nail and a piece of tie wire into that hole. With liquid nail and tie wire, then the screw, it tightens it right up. So that's how you get rid of a big hole. Put some liquid nail in there and a piece of tie wire and go ahead and crank it down. So these brackets are a little bit high, like I said. That way I don't have to be as concerned how level that concrete is. As long as my brackets are level and they're slightly raised, the table was set on that. Put the glue to bridge the gap between the concrete top and the base. So at this point, I'm not over tightening. I'm just snugging them up temporarily. So when I actually set the table, I can start leveling the table. And there is a little adjustment within these brackets. I probably got like an 1/8 inch up or down movement. And I can use that to try to level the top of the table. And then I'll snug them up at that point. Also, you need that play. Just in case the bottom of your table is not perfect, you need a little bit of room. Here it is. This concrete's cured out about a good month now, and it's stripped out beautifully. Now, this could be hand lifted if you had 3 people. You need 3, physically fit people that can lift weight, because this is about 300 pounds. I had the tractor with the forks on here, and I spread the forks all the way out so I would miss the brackets when I dropped it. I didn't like the way it set because of these metal angle irons. They were just a real problem. because they're not level. So I had to actually cut them out. So at this point, I had removed a section of those angle iron brackets. My little 4-inch wasn't going to cut the mustard cutting those out, so I actually flipped the table up on edge, and I used the 9-inch DeWalt cut-off saw with the carborundum blade, and I cut it out real quick. So the table's setting nice here. Now we've got it glued, and this is the next day. So the glue is sat overnight. Now I'm going to go ahead and put some screws up underneath the table. And this is where it gets kind of bad, because I was drilling from the bottom in a hammer mode, and I should have taken the hammer mode off, and I blew a chunk of the table off with the drill, and there it is right there. That was frustrating. But I'm going to show you how to patch this stuff, and so make it go away. You know what was interesting is I still was able to tighten that screw up. Even though I blew a big chunk off the top, I was still able to tighten that screw up without having to do anything. So right now my brackets are tight, and now here's the patchwork. So I just moistened it up a little bit. Now I'm putting the same material I used to patch the stools, I'm using in this. And this stuff, like I said, it's very fine sand, so you can really detail it. It's almost like working with clay. It's pretty much just like a clay. That's what it feels like. So it's going to be great here because I've got to hand carve all that detail back into there. So basically what I did here is I cut the lead out of my pencil, and then I sharpened it to the same width as the rest of the detail work on here. And now I'm looking at some of the other areas of the table that have that same portion that I'm trying to match. And then I'm just kind of free-handed in there. I have the blower blowing, so every time I scrape a piece, it blows the remnants away. That way I can get a good look at what I'm doing the whole time. You know, and I had the patch mixed up, so I said, well, let's see what else I can patch while I'm here. Found a few spots here and there, like right here on the edge, probably from the forks of the tractor. Just the movement of it might have chipped that little piece off. So I did a little touch up since I had a little excess mix. Now, once this patching dries, which I only gave it a couple hours, then I'll be able to stain it. This is the day after the patchwork. Let's see what it looks like. Very hard to see. It's a little bit darker, but it's probably not all the way dried out. But I think with the type of stain that I'm using, it's going to cover this real easily. Let's try it out and see if that's true. Here's our stain, desert brown. What we have to do is add 3 quarts of clean water or distilled. I'm using distilled water, so I need 3 quarts of this to 1 of these, and that makes a gallon. So this will be my measuring cup. Once I pour the stain into the sprayer, I continually pour this water in here, getting all the excess out. Put 3 of those into there. We get 1 gallon. The idea is to spray everything. The bar stools, the table, underneath the support system. On these brackets, what I think I will do is paint these the same color as the stain. Once I stain all the concrete, I'm going to kind of make these disappear with the paint. I'm going to do a desert brown paint on these brackets, just kind of hide them a little bit better. I had another idea too on this whole tabletop system. Rather than using brackets at all, use a little bit larger sonotube here, slide a steel sleeve, maybe some galvanized steel, maybe 1.5 inches down the middle, and leave it flush to the surface here, and that way you could do a removable pull for an umbrella. That's how I think I'll do the next one. Maybe I'll try something like that. And then on these stools, I can either just leave them like this, stained and sealed, and they work fine to sit on and spin around and do whatever you want on them. But another option is I get a little bar stool seat with a rotator, mount that on there. It can be just a stool, or it can be a stool with a little bit of a backrest that spins, which would be a nice little touch. But the way this sits right now, it's really the forever outdoor furniture with, you know, no maintenance really to speak of, and you can just leave it here and it'll always be ready to use without having to mess with it. Now if I got cushions, those are gonna come apart on me, but this really won't, as is. And you can see I did some patching here and there. There's a little spot there I touched up, a little spots here and there. And there's a look at that one that I made disappear. That was a big mistake. I used the hammer drill right here on this one. I should have taken it off of hammer mode and just went with the carborundum drill bit and just drilled it without the hammering, and then I think I wouldn't have had this. I wouldn't have had this problem right here. So that's something I've learned. I don't know, there's a lot of ways to do this, but it definitely has a lot of potential. All right, so here goes the stain. This is just a water-based stain, so it's real forgiving and it covers really well and it makes it really uniform. In other words, if you have patchwork or mismatched color concrete, it's going to cover it pretty well. Be a little bit of modeling depending on your base color, but like an acid etching, you're going to get a lot of variables. This one, not so much. Here's something I was just toying with, the idea of getting a two-tone in some way or another by absorbing a lot of the material off the high points. It really didn't work, although I am capturing stain. You can see by the paper towels they are picking up some of that color, but it didn't make a difference in the end. It's a pretty solid color. This is desert brown. Trying to spray this in a way on this vertical surface that it doesn't run. So I'm doing light coats, and I went around it about 3 times spraying it. Now that patch that I didn't take the color quite as well as I'd hoped it would. So I actually put a nice puddle right on that patch spot and just let it sit there a while so that it would darken it up. You can see it's a little bit lighter. You can kind of see that patch right there. By the time I seal and restain that patch, it pretty much goes away. Like if you didn't know it was there, you'd never know that it ever existed. All right, this is about 2 hours after we've sprayed. We put the stain on here. 2 hours later, it's nice and dry. Now we're gonna seal it. Here's your sealer. I'm gonna dilute it a little bit with some acetone. With the acetone mixing in, there's a better chance that the acetone could do a little damage to the stain, potentially. But I'm gonna go very light coat so it dries quickly, doesn't lay on there and try to delaminate it. All right, we have everything sealed and stained. Also painted the brackets. So we got rid of the black brackets on the bottom, painted them the same color as the stain, so they kind of blend. You really don't notice them under there from a little distance. The patch came out good. It's hard to see where it was. All right, so this is what it's like sitting on it right here. All right, thanks for watching the video. If anybody wants to do any of these kind of home projects and you need a little assistance, you can get me on a video call through my website on the consultation page, and then I'll walk you through or answer any questions you might have. Thanks for watching. Have a good one.